Due to various totally unknown reasons, several habitation modules had perished during their attempted landings. With probably quite a lot of celestial bodies left to go, and probably quite few available habitation modules remaining, the elite Kerbal Council of Management and Staff made the decision to execute Plan K. What Plan K actually entailed had yet to be decided. Simply the act of naming the plan had been sufficient to distract the Council from thinking of a way to address the problem itself. It's a bit of a problem that when you've got an elite council that actually doesn't sort out the problems that it's supposed to be made in order to deal with. Hello, and welcome back to the last project. I've addressed this issue before. Not the issue of the habitation modules, the issue of every time I make the sound PR or BR, you know, pr or brr, I do that stupid lip kind of thing. It's really rather immature. Which makes sense, because I'm really rather immature. Ooh, don't hit that thing. Yes, well done. The module we are using today, I'll talk about where we're going in a second. The module we are using today is the same transfer engine that we brought back from... There it was. That we brought back from Joule in the previous episode. It's the exact same one, fully refueled at the end of that very episode, and now kicking and ready for action once more. Seeing as it was around and it was detached from the rather large transfer engine station, I thought we might as well use the same one. First up is to go get ourselves one of the very few habitation modules. And you may be thinking, one? Just one? Well, I suppose that makes sense if you've got a lack of supply. If your demand is outweighing your supply, you might as well cut down how much of the supply you're using, right? So yes, we're going to be using less habitation modules today. But not just one. Not just one less. If it was any standard moon, you may be thinking we'd use 2, and so now we're going to drop down to 1. No, we're going to use even less than 1. Hopefully, all going to plan, we are going to use 0. Which kind of counteracts the idea of the habitation module, because it's supposed to be a place where the Kerbals will live in for their duration on this planet. That doesn't seem to be what the Elite Council have considered, and as a result, we're going to try and use none. We're going to try and just leave the Kerbals on their respective planetary bodies, which are going to be the Moon and Minmus. Look, I figured that because they are around Kerbin, the Moon and Minmus have been near Kerbin for a rather long time, Kerbals must have adapted to live on the Moon and Minmus without habitation modules. Just like we in real life have adapted to live on the Moon without real habit. Okay, maybe that's pushing it a bit too far, but the point is, our mission is simply to get Kerbals onto the surface of these planets, right? It doesn't matter how we do it, so long as they're there, surely that's all that matters. Yes, this series is a bit tenuous, I realise. But anyway, we have picked up our habitation modules, attached it onto our nuclear engine, and we are set. Funnily enough, I said in the previous episode, or maybe it was a few episodes ago now, that we weren't going to be using, or we weren't going to be showing any more orbital construction episodes, because they're quite repetitive. They all consist of going around shopping for different modules, and having too many of the same thing is a bit boring, really. And you may be thinking, oh, but hang on, you're showing that right now. Well, it's over. Pretty much over. We need to go get the Kerbals that will be dropping on to the Moon and Minmus, but other than that, we are actually done. We have collected together all our modules. And you've seen these crazy big burns. Look how far out we're going. Look, our Apoapsis is around 750 kilometers out just to do this one transfer node. And that is mighty inefficient. Really is. If I'm not picking up any more fuel tanks, then surely it's a bad idea to waste fuel like this, doing these massive rendezvous transfer burns just to get there quicker, to prioritize the mission duration over the actual fuel usage or chance of success, I suppose. And the reason I'm making these ludicrously large burns to get there quicker is simply because I'm very confident. Now, this has never served me well in the past. Being confident is not something that should be said by someone of my caliber who tends to destroy a lot of habitation modules. Yes, I'm confident that this will go well. Have you ever tried this before? No, but I'm confident. Maybe a bit doubtful. But actually, yes, I have tried this before. Not specifically this, using these exact parts under these exact circumstances, but I've been to the moon and Minmus plenty of times. Plenty, absolutely plenty. I've done moon landing, I've probably done hundreds of moon landings in my time. I know what it takes to land on the moon, and I know what it takes to land on Minmus, and it's arrogant statements like that that will get these 4 Kerbals killed. Luckily, they don't know that. Yet. I'm sure they'll find out over the period of the next 20 or so minutes. So, we've collected 4 Kerbals from our 100 Kerbal station, which is a bit inaccurately named. Really, that name ought to be changing continuously because it is now the... crikey, how many Kerbals do we have? We sent 12 to Eve, which brings us down to 88, or brought us down to 88. We sent another 24 out to Jewel, which brings us down to 64? 64? Only 64%? Wow. We've used it. I'm worried the Kerbals are going to run out now. We've used a lot of Kerbals. And that's accounting for 1 celestial body of Eve, 2 celestial bodies of Val, 3 Bop, 4 Pol. 4 out of about 15. We're almost halfway through our Kerbals, but we're not even halfway. Wow. Okay, it's very clear that we're not going to be able to land 4 Kerbals. Well, we're not going to be able to land 12 Kerbals on every single celestial body either. Maybe I didn't quite prepare enough, is what you have all been gloating as you've watched me do these missions. But don't worry, I can always bend the premise, twist the setting for our series here. We're going to be landing 2 Kerbals on Minmus, and 2 Kerbals on the moon without a habitation module between them. So, we hopefully will make up for our lack of Kerbals that way. So yeah, 64 Kerbals remaining, and actually 64 minus the 4 we have now, so 60 Kerbals. 60% are left in the original Kerbal housing facility. Out of those, about 4 of them are presumably the elite council of management and stuff, whoever the hell they are. Don't know how they came into power. After spending so many years in this one station, things must get very tense. It's the whole idea of that Genesis ship. You know, the idea for sending people interstellar? Well, if you're going to have to travel between stars without any sort of wormhole, I guess Interstellar would be a good reference for that kind of thing. That new film, which I haven't seen yet, so don't spoil it. Shh! If you're going to travel without the aid of wormhole or faster-than-light drives, it's going to take you a very long time. So what you do is you have a ship that can house entire cities, or entire societies, more accurately. And you have the original crew, mate, produce offspring, who are then the new crew, who then mate and produce offspring, who then the next level of crew, and next, and next, and next, until by the time you get to the star, you're dealing with the great-great-great-great-grandchildren of the original crew who wanted to go to the star in the first place, and they've kind of forgotten what the mission's about. There's a lot of really good sci-fi books out there about Genesis ships, or whatever they are called, and the point being that the Kerbals have been in orbit for quite a few years now. I wonder if they've started producing offspring. Probably not. But they are indeed probably very tense, and are probably suffering from acute can't get away from the people I hate syndrome, which is a problem for people who are on space stations who don't like each other, because there is literally nowhere you can go. Luckily, the Kerbal space station is rather big. Actually, that's a lie. Considering it once housed 100 Kerbals, it is actually rather small. But Kerbals can be dry-packed. If you look on the back of a Kerbal, it's got instructions for only store in dry, cold locations. Or whatever. And a sell-by date and a use-by date, I'm assuming. I don't know, I don't go around looking at the backs of Kerbals. Who are you, you weirdo? Oh yeah, by the way, we're at the moon! Whee! We're at the moon, fantastic. So we are here, we have transferred out, and look! Over half of our fuel has been used already in the transfer engine alone. which is kind of good, because if it was over half of the entire fuel, I would be a bit worried. But half of the transfer fuel being used is fine. In fact, I expected it to be a bit more than that, considering the crazy big rendezvousing burns that we did during our Kerbal orbit staging thing. And here we are. So we have put ourselves into a very low orbit around the moon, and we detach our habitation module with full fuel. Not going to empty out any fuel like we did in that previous episode. I've mentioned that one a lot, haven't I? If you're watching this video, you should really have already watched the previous iterations of the series, you know. It does help to have the setup. In fact, it's one of the reasons why videos get more views when they are the first in a series, because no one wants to start watching a series from halfway in, but plenty of people will stop watching a series halfway in. So as you go on through the series episodes, they progressively get less views, which is a shame. But anyway, this is not important enough to distract me from commentating over a moon landing. Look, we're landing on the moon, and I've even timed it so that we've got a beautiful view of Kerbal on the horizon. And it better have been beautiful. That was a very, very important part of this, because the Kerbals are going to be looking at it for the next years. That cough was supposed to be some years. However many it ends up being. I don't know if we're ever going to bring these Kerbals back home. Probably not. So, enjoy the view. You've got little else to do. That rhymed and was horribly, horribly out of tone. And here we go. So we have our Kerbals, and we've got out our Kerbal X and Kerbal Y. I didn't have time to read their names. Oh, no, I missed it again. And one of them plants a flag, the mighty Kerbal Space Program logo. HOCgaming. Really rather pushing the limit on what counts as colonization. Yes, Kerbal, no need to get sarcastic with me. I understand. I understand that I have said that we're going to be colonizing these planets. Colonizing is a very broad term, I'm afraid, and it can really count for anything. The contract that these Kerbals signed did not say anything about, you know, actually providing them with materials to survive once they were put down on these various celestial bodies. In fact, the contract didn't really say anything at all, because the contract kind of lacked existence. But anyway, that's 2 Kerbals put down on the moon, so that's mission accomplished. Bye, says the habitation module, as it launches itself off from the ground, starts burning towards 270 degrees in order to rendezvous with our ship awaiting us in orbit, our transfer vessel. Now, actually getting out of Minmus is rather easy in terms of Delta V, so we probably could have taken this habitation module straight there. But I thought, no. The LV-909s, despite being rather good engines, and certainly one of my favourite engines in the game, aren't that efficient. And if you look at how little fuel we have left, it really, really is a bit dire. So luckily we will be redocking with our transfer engines, as per the standard Apollo kind of mission kind of thing, and we are continuing the theme that was started in the previous episode, which was landing on 2 celestial bodies in one video. Kind of makes sense, I suppose. If there are 2 celestial bodies that are near each other, it does make sense to do them both in the same mission, because otherwise it's a bit of a waste of time and fuel. Luckily, or no, not luckily, the opposite of luckily, unfortunately, I didn't think about this when I landed on Eve in the first episode. In fact, I didn't think about a lot of things when I landed on Eve in the first episode, which maybe explains why I ended up killing 8 Kerbals. That's minor details, isn't it? In the grand scheme of things, that's minor details. What isn't minor is the fact that we have arrived at Minmus, magically. We simply teleported from the moon to Minmus without any sort of orbital ballet that we usually experience in between. No, in reality we actually transferred out. We couldn't get a direct intercept, so I simply increased my orbital altitude out to something just below Minmus's, and then I did a rendezvous as you might do for any craft, any 2 crafts. Is it craft or crafts? Plural of craft. I have a feeling it's just craft. I'm going to call them ships. There we go, ships. That solves the problem. If you don't know how to say a particular word or phrase, substitute it for a different word or phrase. There you go. Now, Minmus has rather low gravity, certainly a lot lower than the moon's. So, like we did in the last episode, how many times have I said that in this video, I wonder, we have emptied some of the fuel from our habitation module, because it really doesn't need to take that much down. I mean, it wouldn't have been a problem, because, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, the amount of fuel we would actually end up losing as a result of taking it all down and then carrying spare fuel back up is relatively little, considering how low Minmus's gravity is. So I might as well have taken down the full ship. But oh well, it's a bit more interest and intrigue and other such various I-beginning words for the commentary to help me talk throughout the duration of this video. And so we time warp down to Minmus, travelling at a mighty speed of meters per second. The resolution of my preview window is too small for me to really see. And I cancel out my horizontal velocity, so we basically start falling straight downwards at 60. Is that? I can't see. You can see better than I can. My preview window is at half resolution, so yeah. I just said that, didn't I? Repeating myself, never a good thing if you're doing commentary. Repeating what you've just said is something that I do quite a lot. You see how I said the word repeating several times? It's not good. It's not good. And so we land on Minmus, or we are about to land on Minmus. And the Kerbals down there in the bottom right hand corner look rather happy, blissfully unaware of the imminent doom and suffering and pain that will that will approach them. There we go, more substitution in action. Because they are destined to wait on Minmus for the rest of their lives. And as Kerbals are seemingly immortal, the rest of their lives is quite a long time. Didn't even get a chance to read the names again. I don't know. And they can plant the flag. And let's see what sarcastic comments they have to write for me this time. Yep, we also got abandoned without a habitation module. Oh, I'm acting as if I didn't write these. Really, I laugh at myself. I laugh at myself quite a lot. And there we go. That is pretty much the entire mission actually done at this point. The rendezvous with the lander, the transfer engine, that's it. The lander with the transfer engine, I was right the first time, is really simple. Even simpler than it was around the moon, because of Minmus's low gravity. It means that low orbit around Minmus, less so due to the gravity and more so due to the fact that Minmus is actually really rather small. But it means that orbit around Minmus is all on a smaller scale. Because in a low orbit, you're really close to the ground, which means that there isn't that much space that could be occupied. So any two ships there we go, not craft, any two ships in orbit around Minmus will inevitably be easier to rendezvous because they'll just be closer together by nature of the fact that it's so small. And there we go. Having said that, we have docked. The icon down there displays where we have abandoned our Kerbals on the surface of Minmus. Moon and Minmus colonized. Officially. Where will we go next? I wonder. I think that depends on the phase angles, on the launch windows, on where it is easiest for us to get to next. So we'll find out in the following episode. For now, we'll burn prograde on the Kerbal facing side of Minmus, so that we actually start decreasing our orbital velocity. There was a moment there, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a moment where I was actually burning in the wrong direction, and then I had to flip the ship around, because the habitation module and the transfer engines are docked nose to nose, and the control input was oriented the way of the landing module, despite the fact that the engines we're using are on the transfer engine, meaning that when I was supposedly pointing in one direction, my engines were pointing in the other, so I actually ended up deorbiting onto Minmus. Around any other kind of celestial body, that would have been a problem. Around Minmus, it's merely an inconvenience. And so we descend down into Kerbal's atmosphere for the nth time in this series. Better than coughing to declare that I don't know the exact value or quantity. The nth time. And we do our deorbit burn, our aerobraking. Not deorbiting, our aerobraking burn thing. Aerobrake, I suppose. Words fail me. Words fail me. We do our aerobraking maneuver as described by our aerobraking calculator, which is, the first result on Google when you search aerobraking KSP calculator, or any combination of those three words. 2 words and an acronym, I suppose. And all that is left for us to do is to rendezvous our habitation module back with the habitation module station, which, actually interestingly enough, you might remember there are 2 of them. There was just one, well, no, there are 2 because there's landers and there's the non-atmospheric and the atmospheric varieties, but there's actually 2 iterations of the non-atmospheric station. Reason being that when we took 2 stacks worth out to Joule, in the episode before the last episode, we had to decouple one of them in order to just take 2. And we just left it drifting in space rather than redocking it onto what remained. And it was that one that was drifting in space that I actually brought this one from. So that one's out there somewhere, but I think we're actually going to end up transferring and docking this back onto the larger of the 2 iterations. Just because it makes sense to keep the majority of them in the same place, right? So that's what we'll be doing now. And I've kind of ran out of things to say. I'll talk about virtual reality. That's a topic that I can always talk about. I've been doing some coding, and you know I've been doing some coding because I posted that VR devlog video about 2 weeks ago. Since then, you haven't heard anything from me, unless you've been on Twitter. I've been working on a Sword Art Online user interface. It's going really rather well. I have had very little time to actually do it, so it's not a working GUI yet, but it will be, and once it is, I will be posting the second log of my VR development, and I'll be showing you the work, the fruits of my labour, working on this SAO logout thing. Well, lack of logout. There we go. It's got the whole user interface with the correct icons and everything. I spent about an hour just rewatching the episodes, skipping through them at 4 times speed, and looking for the parts where they were using the in-game GUI of SAO, and then mapping it out in a spreadsheet, which I posted on Twitter. And I basically realised that they are fairly consistent, which is nice. They do have a consistent design for their menu, so it wasn't too hard to map out what should be where. The problem I'm going to have is that because there are so many different options, because their user interface has got so many sub-menus, they're not really going to do anything. I think about 5 of the buttons will actually have uses, and I'll have to build an entire game around Sword Art Online in order to get the rest of the buttons to have any actual practical use in my VR demonstration. But you know, that may actually happen. The one idea for what I've potentially had, or what I've had as a potential idea, is throwing stones at boars. I would love to do some sort of sword battling kind of thing, but the leap motion, which is the current hand tracking technology I'm using, simply isn't precise enough for it, so sadly that isn't going to happen using my current hardware setup. But that is a problem for another time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this episode of The Last Project. We will be back next Friday as always. I will see you then.